Excel, let's make it real. Sean has just had an internal transfer to a department that heavily relies on Excel. It's been a few years since Sean has seen Excel, so he has lost his confidence in his Excel skills. Sean is also not familiar with the latest Excel user interface. For Sean to be efficient, productive, and analytical in his new role, Sean will really have to take charge of Excel. Sean really wants to make a good impression on his manager, so he has been going through Excel manuals and videos all night, and he is now completely overwhelmed. Sean realizes that Excel can store data, perform calculations, data analysis, and even draw charts. He needs a quick and efficient way that empowers him with the essentials of Excel so that he can take charge. In this course, we are going to cover the essentials of Excel so that you are empowered from the very beginning without feeling overwhelmed. Week by week, these essentials will give you the confidence to use Excel to increase your efficiency, productivity, and analytics in your workplace. To empower you to take charge of Excel, this week we will be learning about understanding the Excel user interface. Then we will go through the essentials of Excel terminology so you know what the various sections of the Excel screen are called. We will show you how to confidently select data and navigate within Excel, as well as viewing data in Excel and the different data types. You will then take charge by entering data as well as editing and deleting data. We will then end the week with a really great efficiency tool, the fill handle. The only way to learn Excel is by practicing. You have to do your work, and we are here to equip and empower you to do so. We have a series of practice videos where each video will empower you with a new Excel functionality. You will be empowered to take charge of Excel, so you will need to follow alongside us and practice. Download the Excel workbook and work with us and your peers step by step. Once you have done that, take a break, reset, recharge, and practice these skills again. Because practice makes permanent. Let's break down this week's Excel functionalities for you by sitting down with Nikki and seeing how we can really help Sean and how we can really help you. Welcome to week 1. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you.
Sean's task for this week is that he has to get used to Excel and understand its user interface. So, Nikki, do we really need to learn this stuff?
I know what you're saying, Prashant. It's the basics. But the reality is that whether you've been using Excel for a little bit or even for quite a long time, most of us are self-taught.
Exactly.
And the problem with that is there are lots of gaps, and we don't even know where those gaps are. So the point of this course is to help fill those gaps. And that way we can start building a really solid foundation, unpacking how Excel actually works, and so that we can move forward with confidence. So the point of this week is to take control of Excel, to stop feeling like we're at the mercy of Excel. We want to be in the driver's seat, in control, and feeling confident about how we're using it.
And to take charge of Excel, how do you think the best way to break it down into different steps for our first week?
Good question. So I think, first of all, we need to get familiar with the user interface. What I'd like to start with is a bit of a name and shame. So basically, we can use something for 10 years but not know what it's called, and then we have the problem in that we don't know how to ask for help on it, and when we're asked questions about it, often we don't even understand the question. So we're going to find what everything's called, find where it is, and just start getting more comfortable with clicking around and not being scared, because there's nothing to be scared of.
Once we're comfortable with Excel and we know what everything is called, what do you think we should do next?
Okay, next up, it's important that we can navigate confidently but also efficiently around the user interface. So you may be kind of getting around, but let's look at some of the quicker ways of doing that. And also selecting data. It sounds obvious, but we have to do it quite a lot, and there are a few tips and pitfalls, and I'm just going to make sure that our learners can navigate those successfully.
And once we get to understand how to go through a huge Excel spreadsheet, what do we do next?
Okay, so next up, what we need to do is look at actually entering data. This is something that just about everybody's going to have to do at some point. It's reasonably straightforward, but again, some different data types behave slightly differently, and we want to make sure that people can work efficiently, confidently enter, and confidently delete and edit data as well.
Coming back to the point of data entry and efficiency, as well as what you said about the naming and shaming and understanding what things are called, I've always used the fill handle for years and I didn't know what it was called. So it's hard for me to ask for help about it or have discussions with my colleagues. So it's great that you'll be embedding this and giving us the actual names of all these tools.
Absolutely. And the fill handle is actually the fourth thing we'll be looking at this week. So excellent, Prashant.
Now that we've broken it up into different parts for this week, you can take charge of Excel. We'll be showing you videos to practice alongside with us, which you need to also practice after we've completed the videos, because practice makes permanent when it comes to Excel. You can't break Excel. You might as well do what we're doing and practice it so that you master Excel so that you can become productive in your workplace. Thank you, Nikki. Now it's over to you.
Sean has just started a new job where he's going to be working with Excel quite a lot, and he's feeling a bit nervous. Let's help Sean take charge of Excel. I have just opened Excel 2016. If you are working with an older version, you may find some things look a bit different, but they mostly work the same, so don't worry. In 2016, you will come to this screen, where you can choose to open a file you've been working with recently or go to a blank workbook. We're going to click Blank Workbook. And here we are. Welcome to Excel. Let's start by getting familiar with where things are and what they're called. To begin with, we have a large toolbar at the top of our screen. This is called the ribbon, and it contains nearly all the tools we're going to need. There are so many, though, that they couldn't fit them all into one stretch. So we're on the Home tab of the ribbon, but you'll notice there's also an Insert tab that has tools for inserting things like pictures and charts. Or there's a Data tab, which gives us tools for working with data like sorting and filtering. As we go through the course, you'll become more familiar with the tabs and the tools on them. Coming back to the Home tab, though, I'd like you to notice that the tools haven't been scattered randomly across the ribbon, they have been logically grouped. So for example, this group is called my Font group, and it contains all the tools I need for changing my text. At the bottom right-hand corner of some of the groups, you will find what's called a small dialog launcher. If you single click on that, it opens up your additional options. We won't need these very often, but it's nice to know they're there. I'm going to click Cancel to close. One tab on the ribbon that is a little bit special is the File tab. When we click on the File tab, it brings us to the Backstage view, and this contains all the tools we need for managing our file, like Open, Save, or Close. To come out of the Backstage view, click on the back arrow or press the Escape key on your keyboard. Now we'd like to use our Backstage view to open our first file. So I'm going to click File and make sure you've come to Open. If you have worked with the file recently, it will appear in your Recents list. Otherwise, you will need to click the Browse button. If you haven't already, please make sure you've downloaded the file you need for this practice video. Then navigate to it. Mine is in the Documents folder, and I've put in Excel Essentials. The file we need is W01 V01 Take Charge, and I'm going to double-click to open it. We now have something to look at. The ribbon does take up quite a lot of space, and so we have the option to collapse it by double-clicking on any of the tabs. That does free up space, but it can be a bit alarming when your ribbon suddenly vanishes. If that happens by mistake, don't panic. To get it back, just double-click on any of the ribbon tabs. And we're back. Now, just above the ribbon, you will notice another toolbar. This little guy is called our Quick Access toolbar, and it has my two favorite commands, Save and Undo. It also has the Redo. But even more importantly, we can change this Quick Access toolbar to contain the tools that we need. If I come to the drop-down arrow and click, it gives me some favorites. There's some really great stuff here. I'm going to click on the Sort Ascending. Now, if I need to quickly sort my data by city, I can click into city, click A to Z, and my data is resorted. What about all the other tools that aren't on our drop-down? Well, they can be added too. So, for example, I'm going to click on my Review tab and come to my spelling in my proofing group. Now, this time I'm going to right-click and then click Add to Quick Access Toolbar. And there it is. So absolutely any tool in your ribbon can be added to the Quick Access by right-clicking. Customize this toolbar to speed up your workflow. Just under the ribbon, you will see another bar called the Formula bar. This bar allows you to see what data is in a cell and also edit the data. Now let's come down to the main section of our worksheet. When you open an Excel file, it is typically called a workbook, and a workbook will contain at least one worksheet. Inside a worksheet, you will notice it is divided into columns and rows. At the intersection of each of these is a square, which we call a cell. I'm going to click on this cell, and you'll see it gets a solid border telling me that this is the active cell. Each cell also has a unique identifier made up of its column letter and row number. So I am clicked on D2. If I click into this cell, I'm now in C1. Last quick thing, at the bottom of your workbook is another small bar called your status bar. It's grey in 2016 but may appear green in other versions. If I were to select some numeric data, you will notice my status bar gives me the average, count, and sum of those values. So the status bar can be used to see what's happening in your workbook and also modify some of the views. We will look at how to use it more in the next video. The last thing we want to do now is close our workbook. To do this, I'm going to click File and Close. Excel will check if I want to save first. If you want to keep your changes, press Save. If not, don't save. Now it's your chance. Have a go clicking around the ribbon and trying out the different tools. Be brave. You can't break Excel. To navigate in Excel, the easiest way is to use the scroll bars. We have a horizontal scroll bar, which will allow us to go right and left, and a vertical scroll bar, which will allow us to scroll down and up. At either end of the scroll bars, you will also see small arrows that allow us to make smaller movements. So for example, I can click here to move up one row at a time. Using the scroll bars, however, is not always the most efficient method. Sometimes it is quicker to use our keyboard. For example, we have 4 arrow keys which will allow us to easily move left, down, right, and up one cell at a time. If you need to make bigger movements, 2 really useful keys are the page up and page down. What they do is take us down one screen's worth at a time. So you can see at the moment I'm on row 562 at the bottom here. If I press my page down, you can now see 563 at the top, and if I press page up, I'm back to where I was before. One super useful shortcut is the Control Home button. Press it, see what happens. Control Home takes you back to the beginning of your spreadsheet, and in a very large spreadsheet, that can save you a lot of time. You may also wish to navigate to different sheets within a spreadsheet. If you have a look at the bottom here, you'll see I actually have 3 worksheet tabs, and each of these is a different sheet. To move between these, simply click on the appropriate worksheet tab. And I'm going to move to Sales 2016 now to look at selecting data. To select a single cell, simply click on that cell, and it's a single click, not a double click. This cell then becomes the active cell, and you can recognize it because it's got a solid border around the edge. If you wish to select more than one cell, click on the first cell in your selection, hold your mouse down, and drag to the last cell. You will notice that they all become highlighted except for the first one that you started on. Don't worry, that is still part of the selection. Be very careful, however, when selecting, that you make sure you have the big white cross. There are 3 icons you need to look out for. The big white cross is your select icon, but if you come to the edge of the cell, you will notice you get a skinny cross with black arrows on the edge. This icon is actually your move icon. So if I click and drag now, what it has actually done is move the data. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Don't panic. Nearly every mistake in Excel can be undone just by clicking on the undo button on our quick access toolbar. So I'm going to do that now. The third icon you need to look out for is a little skinny cross with no arrows. You get this when you hover over the corner of the active cell. This time when I click and drag, it looks like it's selecting, but actually it has copied the data. Again, that's not what I meant to do, so I'm going to undo that. So remember, when selecting, you want the big white cross. To select an entire column of data, you can simply click on the appropriate letter. So to select column C, I click on the C. You can also select multiple columns. So let's say I want to go A to E. I click on the A and hold down and drag till I get to the E. And of course, you can do the same with the rows. So to select row 5, I'm just going to click on the number 5. Between the row numbers and the column letters is a funny little corner. And if you click on that, you select your whole spreadsheet. Nice and easy. Sometimes you want to select larger sets of data, and clicking and dragging can be quite slow. So another option is to click on the first cell in your data set, then hold the Shift key down and click on the last cell. And that will select everything between your 2 clicks. But wait, there's more. An even quicker way of doing this is to click somewhere in the data set and then use the shortcut Control A. Control A for all. Very nice and quick. One last thing. Sometimes you need to select 2 sections of data that are not next to each other. We call this non-contiguous data. So let's say I want my account managers and their Q4 results. I start by selecting my account managers. But if I now try and select my Q4 results, oh dear, I've unselected my account managers. So let's try that again. I'm going to select my account managers, but this time I'm going to hold down the Control key and then select my Q4. Excellent. Now it's your chance to give it a go. Sean is now navigating quite comfortably around his Excel workbook. But when we have a really massive workbook like this, it still does present a lot of challenges. And one thing that can help us are some of our view options. We'll start by looking at the bottom of the screen on our status bar. We have a small tool called a zoom slider, and this allows us to quickly zoom in by clicking on the plus, zoom out by clicking on the minus, or simply drag the zoom slider to get to exactly where we need it. To the left of the zoom slider are 3 view options. We are working in normal view, But to the right of that, you will also see the page layout view. This gives us a good indication of how the Excel workbook sits on the page and is useful when we come to print. To the right of that is the page break view, and this is very good for getting an overview of a large worksheet. For the most part though, we will work in normal view, so I'm going to click back on that. Coming up to our ribbon now, I'm going to click on the View tab. You will notice a lot of the tools we've just looked at, like the page breaks views and the zoom tools, are also available on the ribbon tab. If I needed to quickly zoom in, for example, to 100%, I can just click on the 100%. If you find that tool really useful, don't forget you can always add it to your quick access toolbar. So I'm going to right click and add quick access toolbar. There are also several checkboxes which will allow you to turn off and on some view options. For example, if I'd like to hide my grid lines, I can untick grid lines and they're gone. Usually it's easier to work with them on. One tool which can be quite useful is the split. This allows us to split our screen so we can view different sections simultaneously. I'm going to click near the middle of my screen and click split. And where these grey lines have appeared, my screen has actually been split into 4 sections. I find this a bit difficult to work with, so I'm going to double click on the middle split to remove it. I now just have a top and a bottom. And if I wanted to see some data at the top and compare it to data near the bottom, I can come to my lower scroll bar and scroll down till I get to near the bottom. And you can see I look at 2 different sections of my screen simultaneously. To turn the split off, I can double click back on this line or come back up to split and click it off. Now, while the split is quite useful, even more useful is the freeze panes. Sometimes I want to be able to simply scroll down or scroll across and still be able to see my headings. And you can see at the moment I can't. So I'm going to bring this little scroll bar back up and I'm going to come to freeze panes. If I click the drop down and say freeze top row, it sounds good, but you'll see it's only frozen the top row, which doesn't really help me in this situation. So to turn that off, come back to freeze panes and click unfreeze. Now what I actually want to be able to do is freeze the top 3 rows and my first 3 columns. The trick to this is to click in the cell directly right and directly below the columns and rows I want to freeze. So you can see I'm below row 3 and to the right of column 3. I now come up to freeze panes and I click freeze panes. Some faint black lines have appeared, but you'll notice now when I scroll down, my headings stay fixed, and when I scroll right, my 3 columns on the left also stay fixed. And again, to turn freeze panes off, back to freeze panes and unfreeze. Now the last quick option I want to look at is the option to switch windows. This is useful when you have multiple workbooks open. So let's get another workbook open. We've up to now looked at File Open, but I'm going to press Ctrl O, which is the shortcut, and I'm going to choose W101 VO2 Select and Navigate. We are now looking at a different workbook, but what about if I want to get back to the one I was working in previously? I come to my View tab, I come to Switch Windows, and I now have a list of all my Excel workbooks that are currently open, and I can just click to switch. There's also a useful shortcut key. It's Ctrl F6. So I press Ctrl F6, and you can see that quickly switches me between my open windows. So there are some view options to help speed up your workflow and make it easier to work with larger workbooks. Get in there and have a play.
We're now ready to start creating our workbooks. As a practice exercise, let's help Sean create his expenses for the day. To begin with, we're going to need a new workbook. To do this, we're going to come up to the File tab on our ribbon and click. Come down on the green panel till you find New and click, and then select Blank Workbook. And again, it's a single click. We now have our blank workbook. Let's quickly zoom in so we can see what we're doing. I'm coming down to the zoom slider and just clicking the plus a few times. You will notice that the first cell, A1, has a green box around it. It is by default the active cell, and that means we can just start typing directly into it. So I'm going to type expenses, and now I could click away, but in Excel, it's better practice to press Tab to jump to the cell to the right, or press Enter to jump to the cell below. This commits the change and moves you down one cell. We're going to press Enter again to get one more down. Right, next thing we're going to type is item, but now I want to go right. So press Tab, and it's gone one cell to the right where I'm going to type cost and press Enter. You'll notice it actually jumps down and back to the first empty cell in the next row. This makes your data entry very quick and easy. Right, Sean's first expense was his train ride. So we're going to type train and press Tab, and that costs $6.30. So I'm just going to put 6.3. We don't need to worry about putting extra decimal places or the dollar sign, as we'll look at how we can use formatting tools to do that easily in a later video. Now click Enter. All right, Sean also bought a coffee, so let's put a coffee in and press Tab, and that costs $3.50. And then lastly, he bought some lunch, and that cost $12. And Enter. He also bought a juice, but then he realizes actually he didn't buy that juice today. That was yesterday. So now he wants to delete that value from that cell. Deleting is easy. Select the cell or cells where you want to remove the data and press the Delete key on your keyboard. This will not remove the cell, just the contents of that cell. Please note, pressing Delete on your keyboard and using the Delete on your ribbon are quite different. The Delete on the ribbon actually removes the cell, and that may cause other data in your spreadsheet to move. So don't use that unless you actually want to remove the cell itself. Sean now realizes he actually has made a bit of a mistake. The train journey in cost him $6.30, but he's going to have to catch the train home again, so he wants to double this value. If you wish to replace the value in a cell, single-click and overtype by putting in the new value. So we're going to put in $12.60 and press Enter. In the situation where you want to modify the contents of a cell, you have a few options. So I'd like train to actually say train ride. Start by clicking on the cell you want to change. Then you can either come up to the formula bar, click in the formula bar and type your change. Now I actually don't want to keep that, so here's a nice little trick. If you've started modifying a cell and you don't want to keep your changes, just press Escape. You don't need to press Undo because you haven't really committed the change until you press Enter. Now another way you can edit a cell is to double-click on it. You'll see my cursor is now blinking in the cell and I can type in my change. And again, click Enter. The keyboard shortcut for double-clicking is to press F2. And then again, if you don't want to make the change, press Escape. Next thing we need to do is type in a date. So I'm going to come up to cell B1 and I'm going to type in the current date, which is the 12th of the 4th, 2017. Now it's really important when you type dates into Excel that you use the correct format for your regional settings. So in Australia, for example, we type day followed by month followed by year. If I was in the US, I would need to put month, then day, then year. Once you finish typing, click Enter, and you will notice that Excel's actually made my column wide enough to fit the date, which is really handy, but it doesn't do that for all your data. So if you decide you want to adjust your column widths, come up to the top where you have your column letters, find the little separating line to the right of the column you want to make wider, and then click and drag. It is a very bad idea to leave blank columns in the middle of your data set, so if you need to, rather just make your columns a little wider. Now, one last little thing to finish off our expenses, we need to total them up. So I'm going to click into B7, and here's a great trick. We're going to come up to our Home tab on our ribbon, and on the far right, you will see a tool called AutoSum. We'll look at working with calculations in a lot more detail next week, but if you just quickly need to add up some numbers, you can click on the AutoSum. You'll see it's added up all the numeric values above the cell where I originally clicked, and then just press Enter. So that's Sean's expenses complete. Why don't you now practice at creating your own expenses?
Sean is starting to feel a lot more confident about his Excel skills, and that's just as well because he's been given his first assignment. The boss has asked him to complete the help desk roster for the next 2 weeks. One of the tools that can help a lot with this is the fill handle. The fill handle is located at the bottom right-hand corner of a cell, and when you hover over it, you should get a small black cross. At its simplest, the fill handle allows us to quickly copy. Let's have a look. So I'm going to click and drag down to row 17 and release, and it has copied my data for me. The fill handle can do some slightly cleverer things though as well. So I'm going to click onto B4 where I've got my record number, and I actually want these to go R1001, R1002. Let's see what happens when I drag my fill handle. Now what has happened here is the fill handle has given us what's called a series. Where you have a combination of text and numbers, it automatically adds 1 to the numbers. Well, that is interesting. Let's see what happens with our dates. So I'm going to click on the 1st to the 5th. This time, however, instead of dragging, I'm going to try a shortcut. I'm going to double click my fill handle. So 2 quick clicks. How good was that? And again, we've got that series where it's adding 1 to each date, which is perfect. Let's see what happens with days of the week. So I've clicked on Monday. I'm again going to come to my fill handle, double click. Well, that is clever. And that will work with days of the week, all months of the year. Now I've done each of those individually so that you can see how they work. But to show you how quick this could have been, I'm going to undo those last 3 changes. I'm going to select all 3 of these and then double click my fill handle. And you can see you don't even have to do them one at a time. Excellent. Now each of my help desk shifts is 8 hours. So really I just want to copy that number 8 down. Let's see what happens when we double click the fill handle. And there we go. So that's interesting. With dates, we get a series, but with numbers, we automatically get a copy. Now I need to number my shifts for the next 2 weeks, but I know that when I double click my 1, I'm just going to get a series of 1s. However, Excel does actually give you options. Whenever you use the fill handle, you should see a little icon come up at the bottom, and if you hover over it, you'll see it's called Autofill Options. I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow, and you'll see it has done a copy, but you do have the option to do a fill series. Well, that's brilliant. I'm going to click on that, and there you go. Now let's see what would happen with our options for our dates. So I'm going to come back to date here, double click, come and have a look at my options. And this time it has chosen fill series, but I could choose a copy. So if you need to do that, you have that with dates as well. Or you could do something quite fun. So I could do fill weekdays or fill months. But I'd like to get back to my fill series. So quite a rich selection of options. The fill handle also allows you to do simple patterns. So for example, my cumulative hours, total hours on the help desk, is going to go up in 8ths. If I just copy the 16, that's not going to work. But if I select both the 8 and the 16, so I tell Excel there's a pattern, and then double click, there we go, counting in 8ths. And Excel can do this for quite a range of fairly straightforward patterns. Let's look at a slightly more complex one. So I have my 5 help desk staff here. I'm going to select all of them and again double click, and it has copied the whole group down. Now, one really exciting feature that was added in 2013, so this will only be available to 2013 and 16 users, is something called flash fill, which is an even more sophisticated pattern matcher. If you have a look here, I have Rajes's address, which is made up of his first name, a dot, his surname, and then the company name. Now, if I come and copy that down, it just copies it. But if I come to my autofill options, you'll see there's an option to do flash fill. And when I click on that, it spots the pattern and automatically creates addresses for all my staff. Wasn't that quick? Have a go at using the fill handle yourself.
Congratulations! You have taken your first all-important steps to take charge of Excel. With the skills and tools you have learned this week, you are now ready to perform a whole range of activities with this complex but amazing bit of software. It's one thing, of course, to work alongside Nikki in the practice videos, and another to venture out on your own. But this is where it gets interesting. Trust yourself and start experimenting. Open the practice challenge for this week and get ready to be amazed at how far you have come already. To reinforce what we covered this week, test yourself with the quizzes and study the resources in the toolbox. Here you will find the shortcuts, terms, and concepts that we work through each week. And keep an eye out for our ninja tips. To get the most out of this course, make sure that you set your goals and make a plan on how to achieve them. Try and schedule a bit of time once a day to study and practice. Remember, practice makes permanent. Before we call it a day, I wanted to say how excited we are to have you with us on this journey. You are not alone. If you have a question, get stuck, or need some inspiration, jump onto the discussion forum and connect with us and the other learners from around the world. Now, get into the practice challenge. Work hard and have some fun. See you next week.